Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 5:47 a.m. East Coast time, Wednesday, July 10th. Hope you're all having a good start to your day or your afternoon whenever you're viewing this video. The WNBA slate is today. There's a 4-game slate, but it starts at 11 a.m. East Coast time. So make sure you're checking in. There's a game at 11. Another game starts up at 11:30. I'm not sure if the other ones, I think they start later in the day, so there should be other types of slates, probably a stinky showdown slate. But yeah, if you're watching this in time, hopefully this helps. Hit me with a like button. That'll help me a little bit. If you hit me with the red subscribe button, that helps out a ton. Got some backlash yesterday about bringing up the subscribe button just due to half the people not being subscribed, whatever it might be. But yeah, if you hit me with the subscribe button, helps me grow and reach more people, which is my whole goal for this channel. So appreciate that. If you get any value, take the 2 seconds to hit that red button. Thank you so much. And yeah, outside of that, my name is Sal Vetri. If you're new to the channel, not a lot of people do WNBA content, so very often we get new people to the channel, so welcome here. And pretty much what I do is I cover NFL, NBA, MLB, which yesterday's All-Star game was pretty interesting. I thought there was huge edges, and if I was somebody who had 150 lineup maxes into those bigger tournaments, that would be one of the days that I would want to, even though it was a showdown slate. Crazy edges just by playing bench players because people didn't know how to uncheck the boxes. You have the WNBA right now, 4-game slate, golf as well starting up tomorrow. So all this types of content and things like that I'll be involved with in one way or another. So WNBA, we'll start with the injury dashboard. We'll get into some of the pace stats for these games and then some of my early interests. I do have projections available for the WNBA. I project players' minutes, points, DVP, factor in pace differentials and historical data for game totals. All that, and then obviously the person's point per minute production. So all of that stuff is factored into my projections in one way or another. A few other things are. It is linked down below over on Patreon. Sometimes I do some podcasts over there, not as often as many would probably want, like daily. I can't just factor all that in right now in the mix of a move, closed on an apartment yesterday, but you don't care about my life. So for the most part, let's just get right into it. Again, the projections are on Patreon if wanted, and you want to see how I will be utilizing the slate today. So starting with just some of the injury news. Elena Delle Donne, she went in for like 1 or 2 minutes in the last game in a beautiful spot in that last game and screwed a lot of people over, including some of my lineups that I had her in. But that's what you get when you have injuries. It was a nose injury. I don't know if she broke her nose, but she is questionable for today. I'm just not projecting her for minutes in the projections right now because I always think that it's more beneficial when a star player goes out to have a look at what will change, at least in my projections. So for our patrons and people who have access to the projections, you can right now see what I have changed for all the other players in this lineup with her having no minutes. Now, if she's ruled in and that she's going to be limited, well, then we just switch that, and it's an easy fix. We have the information. If she's ruled in full-time go, well, then it's just pretty much what it's been for the whole season for those Washington rotations. So I think the biggest question marks will be if she's out. So right now the projections reflect that, and it's going to be helping out the most in Aerial Powers and a Hawkins and maybe a little bit of a Tolliver from a production standpoint. Diana Taurasi, this has just been a guessing game now for a week and a half to 2 weeks. Is she going to play? We were told that she was going to play last Friday. That was 5 days ago. She didn't play in the past 2 games. She's now had 5 extra days. They said that she's been working off rust in practice from her back injury, trying to get caught up to game speed. So even whenever it is time for her to play, I don't think she's going to be a full 30-minute per game go right off the bat like she was in the last game. Or last year, I think it'll be closer to 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm not interested in playing her regardless at 9,900. But keep an eye on it. I have her projected for 0 minutes right now. I'm just continuing to project her out. And if she's in, she's obviously going to affect this guard depth for this Phoenix team is ridiculous with Bonner, with Mitchell, with Carsons, with January, right? All these players in some way or another are going to be affected. So keep an eye on Taurasi because I'll have less interest in some of the other Phoenix guards. Dantas is supposed to be missing likely 2 more weeks for Minnesota, which is a big downgrade for Minnesota. We'll kind of hit on who gets the bumps there in terms of minute production. And then for Chicago, Katie Lou Samuelson and Jameer Faulkner are going to be back today, or at least they're not listed on the injury report. I'm not sure if they'll be back today. I have them each in for 0 minutes because one's returning from overseas, one's returning from a knee surgery. That is Faulkner. Both are off the injury report. I have as probable, but that could very just well mean that they're not dressing. We've seen that a lot this year. So just keep an eye on these players. Even if they're in, they're not players that I think come back and play significant minutes, closer to 20 or more today. The only thing that would happen is they would sort of impact some of the guards on the Chicago team. They're both guards. If they saw more minutes, it would kind of impact the secondary guard options, which we don't really have interest in anyways from Chicago. The interest that you have are those 2 main starters with the Shields and Vandersloot, and they're really not going to be impacted today. Nia Covey, so the WNBA, like we said, or like I've said before, there's no good trace on injury news. You kind of just rely that somebody says something. And with Nia Kofi, I haven't seen anything. As of like last Friday, she was questionable with an illness, so she was ruled out And then in the game a day or two later, or 2 days later, she was ruled out once again, and they didn't really say why. I'm assuming it's this illness. I'm not sure if it's something more serious, but we haven't gotten any updates. She's a player who does average a decent amount of time per game, right? 15 minutes or so. So I have her in for like 10 minutes, which is what she's been seeing over the past few games, an average of, combined with some other factors that some players or increasing minutes on Atlanta. And it could very well be 0, so just keep an eye before lock. Again, those 10 minutes would be distributed to like players who are seeing 4 minutes right now. So it's nothing major. It's just something to keep an eye on. It's very questionable, hopefully, or it's very interesting that we don't get any news. Hopefully that it's nothing more serious. So with that said, let's move over to the target offense sheet. Perfect time to hit that subscribe button. Red one. Helps me out. Thank you. Here, so we got the pace and we got game totals. Look, I project game totals. I've said this before. I'm terrible at it. I am not a Vegas bookie. The only reason I project them is it's one of the 8 things that go into my projections to populate a number. And it's probably the smallest factor in there because the difference between 147 and 150 game total is not going to impact one specific player so much. It is going to distribute those 3 extra points for the game. Or 3 extra team total points across like the entire team's production. It will impact like at most like a quarter of a fantasy point. So it's nothing crazy. But anyways, some of the pace spots that I think are interesting today, Washington and Phoenix. Phoenix is the slowest pace team in the league, I believe, right there with Dallas. And they'll be facing Washington today, who's right around league average. So what this is going to do is you have a league average pace team. You have one of the slower pace teams in the league. It's going to generate a very slow paced game. So you get a big pace down spot for Washington today. You're going to get a pace up spot, a huge one for Indiana, one of the slower teams in the league, against Las Vegas, which is the fastest paced team in the league. You're going to get a big pace down spot for Las Vegas and a huge pace up spot, almost 5 possessions more in this game for Indiana. Now, what is pace? Pace is just possessions per team per game. So when you see 79.86 today, or 79.68 today, you're going to be getting that in the game for Indiana and Las Vegas is my projection, taking into account league average pace plus these teams' specific paces. So a big pace up spot for Indiana, the biggest one on the slate, which usually means that they're going to score more than their season total in points, which is something that I factor into my projections. Same thing for Las Vegas, except less pace here. They would have to shoot more efficiently to see their usual point per game production. And then lastly, you're going to see a slight pace up spot for Minnesota. Usually when they get put in these pace up spots, it's a little bit better for players like Odyssey Sims and some of the other guards out there, so keep an eye on that. Chicago, pretty much no virtual change to their pace. They're usually 80.2 is their team pace per game. It's 79.98, so nothing major there. So pretty much Minnesota's in a pace up spot. Indiana's in a huge pace up spot. Washington's in a decent sized pace down spot. And Las Vegas is in a decent-sized pace down spot. So that's where you're at overall. In terms of targeting games on a 4-game slate, the ones that I want to look out for, there's really none. I do like pieces of the Connecticut team because you're going to see that the forwards have a great matchup today against Atlanta. So even though that's probably going to be the lowest pace game or the lowest total game by a wide margin, I'm still interested in getting there. I do like pieces of Atlanta due to the matchup that their guards will have. And then getting to Phoenix can be a mess today if Taurasi comes back. Washington is going to provide a lot of value if indeed Deladene is out today. And then from there on, Las Vegas has a lot of pieces in a higher paced game, which would be a higher total. Indiana is not a team I usually get to, so I'm not really concerned. Minnesota, I do have interest in some of their pieces. And then Chicago, some of their pieces are interesting, but I usually don't get there either just due to the price points that I usually get them at. So, yeah, I'm all across the board today on a 4-game slate. I think identifying value in Washington, pretty much where the injuries are, makes a lot of sense. So let's just get on to some early interest, and I already know that I have to filter these by price. So I pretty much just go down. They're not in ranking order when you see them right away. Pretty much what that means is that I am just listing them as I go while I make the projections, while I go through minute projections, players that seem interesting for one reason or another, injury, whatever it could be. So it will be listed by salary first. So Wnba Dfs is not my favorite player today, or by any means. It's just the most expensive player that I have interest in. Now, Brittany Griner is on this slate on the same exact team, and Brittany Griner has been balling. She's now the most expensive player, at least on this 4-game slate, which is impressive. She's been consistent all year long, and the big thing with Griner, and I still do have interest, right? She just doesn't make this list, so I wanted to talk about her. She's been averaging like 36 minutes a game this season. That's insane. So once you get any sort of production out of a player averaging 36 minutes a game who's over a fantasy point per minute in terms of production, it's just going to be so easy to score close to 40 every single time out there. Now, this matchup against Washington, if Deladene is in, I don't have interest in Bonner because it's a tough matchup with Deladene down there and some of the other bigs for Washington. They're one of the best teams defending the center and forward position. If Deladene is out, I don't know how it gets I don't know how the matchup doesn't get better for Brittany Griner. It's going to be, yeah, a team that's overall league above average, one of the best teams, if not the best team on defense in Washington, but you lose your staple of your defense at the exact position that would guard Griner. So keep an eye on this. I am projecting right now Dene to be out, so Brittany Griner should be on this early interest list as well. She'll probably be my most interesting play that I have interest in today. As long as Dene is out, the matchup just becomes so much easier for a player who should see 35 plus minutes. And I don't think the game would blow out. Phoenix is not that overpowering of a team, and Washington, even without Dene, does still have playmakers. Dewana Bonner, her teammate, I would not have interest in Bonner too much at 10-2. If indeed Delaney is out, I think I would have a lot more interest in getting to Griner. So just by process of elimination, I would not be getting to Bonner on the same team. Got some cop cars going out here early in the morning, not even 6 a.m. Going to be waking up the whole neighborhood. Poor game. Let's let them pass. My God, hope whoever that's all about is okay. Jesus, damn. Good thing nobody's sleeping in this house, right? Damn. Jonquel Jones at 10-1, a lot of interest here. So Jones started off the year being like an MVP caliber player right there with Natasha Howard. Now it's kind of flipped. You get Griner playing a lot better. Jones just can't touch 30 minutes. It's been 4 straight games. Now, she's had personal foul trouble in 2 of those games, right? 4 fouls. One of them was due to a blowout. So a lot of the recent success for Jonquel Jones, or lack of success, has been due to being unlucky. Now, this matchup against Atlanta, they're the second worst team guarding the forward position in terms of fantasy points per game. I have a lot of conviction, and if you watch my channel for WNBA content often, around Jonquel Jones. I might be biased. I've actually watched some of the games that Connecticut has played in. I think they're a great team. I think they have a lot of playmakers overall. And I think Jonquel Jones just looks fantastic when they run the offense through her. And I think just based on her usage rate for a forward, it's a little bit lower than some of the other forwards that you'll see, right? Cambridge is 26%. Jones is about 23.4%. If I was to put like a Natasha Howard on here, she'd be around 25%. But it's nothing major. It's not like she's 17, 18% not getting the ball at all. So 10-1, Jonquel Jones, I do have a lot of interest in today, especially when you factor in the matchup. Liz Cambage, she went for 40-plus points and didn't get 30 minutes. I've been saying it all year. If she gets 30 minutes, she's pretty much a lock for 40. Well, she played 26 minutes and she scored 40. So she's one of the best point-per-minute producers in the game, like above Jones, above Griner, even above Bonner probably at this point. She's averaging like over 1.35 fantasy points per minute. That's fantastic. Now, the matchup today lends itself to be more favorable than anything, probably closer to neutral if you really had to flip a coin against Dupree, but have interest in $9,800 Cambridge. It's just too cheap of a price point. Even though her minutes are not stable, which is always worrisome. I have her at 28 today. 9-8 for Liz Cambage, and the ceiling in the 45-point range if she sees 30 minutes is on the table in a favorable, or not, at least a beneficial matchup for her skill set. Yeah, I have to like it. Alyssa Thomas, look, Alyssa Thomas is probably too expensive today. I'd rather pay $400 more for Jonquel Jones, who's the same exact player on the same team. Well, not the same exact player, but on the same team for only $400 more, and probably the better overall player. But Thomas, I just wanted to factor in that this matchup, I can't stress it enough against Atlanta, is so beneficial for forwards. 9,700, she's in play. I probably just don't get there due to the fact that I do have more interest in Jones, but I have nothing to say badly if you want to go Thomas over Jones. I just personally think Jones has a more consistent floor and ceiling. Odyssey Sims, 9,500. The price is getting up there on Sims now, but it's hard not to like for a player that's just going out there and pretty much gunning 36 minutes a game. Have her at 36 today. She saw 38 in the last one. She's seeing all the minutes out there due to some injuries, due to some players going overseas, and she's the guard right now that's just been killing it in DFS, and her price point is skyrocketed from like the mid-7s, high 7s to this 9,500 range, about to touch 10K. The matchup today, if anything, is a little bit neutral against the Shields and against Vandersloot. It's not great. The price point probably keeps me away from her, but she still is in play. Collier, I've been playing Collier a bunch this year. Lots of things crazy going outside. 8,600. I live in a very safe neighborhood in State College. It's the safest fucking place in the world. But we got people going crazy in the morning. 8,600 for Collier. Yeah, I think the matchup here is really beneficial. The forwards against this Chicago team. You could also go to Sylvia Fowles. I just have more interest in some of the other top-end players. But Collier is this nice upper mid-range play at 8,600 that does have a beneficial matchup. Chicago is, I think, in the bottom third of the league. Yes, they are. Bottom quarter of the league, but bottom third, I believe, in defending the forward position. You're going to get a beneficial matchup today. Tiffany Hayes, 8,200, the only player on Atlanta. Actually, I should run that back a little bit. I have interest in the guards on Atlanta. You'll see Tiffany Hayes and Brittany Sykes right next to each other. The matchup, the second worst team against the guard position is Connecticut. That gets a little bit even worse when you factor in some of the not recent, but over the past month, some of the things happening with their guards rotations. So yeah, this matchup against Atlanta or against Connecticut is very favorable. Now, Brittany Sykes or Tiffany Hayes. Well, Tiffany Hayes is a much better point per minute producer, but they're both going to see about the same amount of time out there. And Brittany Sykes is no slouch when it comes to point per minute production. So I think if you want to save money, save $700 to go to Brittany Sykes off of Tiffany Hayes. Yeah, Hayes probably has the higher ceiling, but Sykes is very much capable in 30 minutes of play in this matchup to get you 25 plus fantasy points. And I think those minutes are a lot more stable than people think. So I have interest in both players. I'd probably go to Sykes for the price savings, but there's nothing wrong with Tiffany Hayes today. Danielle Robinson from Minnesota against Chicago. This guard matchup is not the worst. And Robinson is like an ideal cash play, a player that'll get you over 20 fantasy points at a decent or affordable price point of $7,300. I do like that in all formats. So, Leilani Mitchell, I have her in yellow because if Tarazi plays today, I'm not going to have interest in Mitchell at 7,200. Tarazi's probably not going to play 20 minutes, but 10 minutes is enough to pull some off of Leilani Mitchell at this price point. Mitchell, though, it's going to be a little bit tougher of a matchup today for her. As I look at this, it's going to be bottom third in the league against guards. Same thing for Wnba Dfs, like we talked about. But Mitchell is just so consistent, and now she's playing like 35 minutes a game. She's taking minutes away from Carson, who they try to give some minutes, and it just didn't work out. Leilani Mitchell I have for 35 minutes today. And whenever a player touches 35 minutes and she's not approaching $10,000, it's like a almost must play for me. Like Odyssey Sims will play 35 minutes today, but she's almost $10,000. Same thing for Wnba Dfs, she's 10,000, should see around 33 to 35. And Leilani Mitchell is no slouch when it comes to point per minute production. She'll get you 0.9 fantasy points per minute. She plays 35 minutes. It's always going to be in the mid to upper 20s in fantasy points. 7,200 is just way too cheap. Now, she's in yellow because if Tarazi is in today, well, then I don't have much interest. Natasha Cloud's way too cheap, 6,400. This is a player that we were trying to deliberate between whether we wanted Natasha Cloud in our lineups or Christy Tolliver. Now, if there is no Della Dene, they don't play the same position, but they're on the same team, the same starting lineup. And obviously, Dene is a huge player or piece in that offense. You take that out, it's going to have to get trickled down to some of the other starters. Natasha Cloud at 6,400. Even if Elena Della Don is in, I have a lot of interest in Cloud playing like 30 to 32 minutes a game. I have her at 32 for today. 6,400 is too cheap of a price point. At least when you're talking cash, this is the type of value that you want to get in that mid-range, not having to throw a dart. Aerial Powers at 5,900. So if Aerial Powers and Hawkins, we talked about it in the injury dashboard. This is where I would go if Dene is out. I'd lean on Powers. I think she's a better point per minute producer, but both Powers and Hawkins saw big bumps in their minutes. I have Powers at 28 today. I have Hawkins, I believe, at 26 minutes as of right now. If Della Dene is out, they're both favorable price points. I think you could play either of them. I just prefer Powers due to her point per minute production and also just being more adept to these rotations and playing bigger minutes. And then Maisha Hines-Allen. I really don't have much interest in Maisha Hines-Allen. She's $3,000. She's sort of a punt play. I have her at 15 minutes today. Increase in time due to that injury that we were talking about. The matchup is not that great. The matchup is not that great for either Powers or Hawkins or Hines-Allen. All these players, that's not a good matchup against Phoenix at all, against a grinder down there. But the price points are cheap enough on all of them that I still have interest. And when I put Maisha Hines-Allen on here, I have her in red. You probably should not play her. I'm just saying that she's $3,000, dirt cheap, and she should see 15 minutes today, and she averages 0.9 fantasy points per minute or a little bit higher. So an above average player in terms of production. Dirt cheap. Just the minutes probably are going to be capped around 15. So compared to some other players, even though she's $3,000, I probably don't get there. But if you get 15 fantasy points out of her at $3,000, you can fit in all the studs that you want. You can get another 10K player in there instead of a 7K player, and that's a big upside there. So I think it's worth considering, but it's very, very risky. So this is where I'm at right now. If you want the projections, if you want to see these blacked out columns, point per minute value and points, you can go down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at SalVetri I do MLB and WNBA content right now. NFL will be rolling out very shortly. I mean, less than a month away for the preseason. Very excited about that. Some season-long content I'll have out as well in terms of just positional ranks. But hit me with a like before you go. And the biggest thing I could ask is just hit me with the subscribe button. I really greatly appreciate that. It allows me to grow and build this channel. It allows me to get towards my goals of making this something that I can do as a full-time living. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. My name's Sal. Best of luck today, everybody. Peace out, gang.